Joe Manchin has sunk the big Biden better build back boondoggle. This ridiculous Titanic of a legislation, this $3.5 trillion bill that they had obligingly scaled back to the 1.75 trillion range, essentially to woo Joe Manchin. Well, the good news is he's not going for it. And what I love is not only his no, but the way he did it. He goes on Fox News and apparently, without even telling Biden, he goes, kind of, I'm a hard no. I'm not going to do it. I can't vote for it, to quote Joe Manchin. And apparently the Biden people are absolutely furious. They're like, we had him over. We had him over to the White House. We had him sitting in the very chair. We have foreign dignitaries. We even had him to Joe Biden's house in Delaware. So apparently they thought that all this kind of courting of Joe Manchin would cause him to buckle in the way that their normal Democratic sleazeballs do buckle. They basically ask, what's in it for me? What are some goodies you can offer me? And they sell out. But with Joe Biden, he's not doing it. And I love his quote. My Democratic colleagues in Washington are determined to dramatically reshape our society in a way that leaves our country even more vulnerable to the threats we face. Wow. So what are those threats? Well, he's talking about inflation. He's talking about creating chronic government dependency, which is to the long-term competitive disadvantage of the United States. So there are all kinds of good things that have come out of this. And well, I guess on a very small note, one good thing is, I was getting a little tired of that little indefatigable Indian fellow, MK Manu Raju, who keeps running after Biden everywhere. Are you going to vote for it? 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 You know, and Manchin would be like, I said Biden, but I meant Manchin. Manchin would be like kind of putting him off. I guess now Raju can go chase after someone else because Manchin has declared his position. ABC News headline, a single senator is about to seriously set back an entire presidential agenda. A single senator. Manchin's doing it on his own. No mention of the 50 Republicans that are holding firm. And by the way, here we have to give a little credit to Mitch McConnell. I've been critical of McConnell on the podcast, and for good reason, I think, but there's another side. McConnell has done an amazing job, a great job. Think of how hard it is to hold the entire 50 Republicans, including people like Romney and Murkowski and Susan Collins, and essentially it's 50 no's. And it's the 50 no's plus Manchin that creates the 51 vote majority in the Senate. So the Democrats are acting like Manchin is thwarting a majority, but the simple fact of the matter is that the defeat of this legislation is a triumph of democracy, of majority vote. Why? Because a bipartisan coalition of 51 senators has shut down a minority scheme, by a scheme run by the minority in the Senate to ram this through with the help of media pressure. And so, fortunately, democracy prevailed, and the majority got its way. Now, I'm laughing at Bernie Sanders because he goes on, I think it was CNN, and he goes, Joe Manchin's got a lot of explaining to do to the citizens of West Virginia. And I'm thinking, wait, are you telling me that this left-wing socialist from Massachusetts, this guy who's basically never worked a day in his life, this guy who's gone from being a private leech to being a public leech, this guy understands West Virginia better than Joe Manchin, a state, by the way, that Trump carried by almost 70%, by almost a margin of over 30 points? There have been polls in West Virginia, and West Virginians overwhelmingly oppose this better build back. So it's actually no mystery. You don't have to read the tea leaf. Why would Joe Manchin do this? Unless you think that Joe Manchin is some kind of a serf of Pelosi, Schumer, and Biden himself. Joe Manchin is doing what his constituents want. He's actually representing, as by the way is Sinema, whose vote was never assured for this legislation. The good news is that I think this bill is dead in the water. Now, Biden isn't admitting this. He's like, well, we're going to have to get back to it early in the new year. But there's a lot of bad blood that is now brewing between the White House and and Manchin. And part of it is the stinging statements that the White House is putting out, basically implying that Manchin has, quote, done a breach of his commitments to the president. So Manchin's a liar. Manchin gave assurances and he's now backing out of it. And then here's the White House. Maybe Senator Manchin can explain to the millions of children who've been lifted out of poverty, in part due to the child care credit, why he wants to end a program that is helping achieve this milestone. We cannot. So Manchin doesn't care about children, but apparently Biden, Psaki, and the White House does. So apparently Manchin is really annoyed at these people, and I'm delighted at his annoyance, and I'm also delighted at the discombobulation of the left. I think it's time for Manchin to really think about kind of, just jumping over the tennis net, going over to the other side. Because, he would be a kind of a rhino, I admit. He would be a rhino in the Republican camp. But this is a time, and it may be the only time, where we can say a good word for the rhino.